Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I am back with some more Esoterica. Today we are continuing our journey as we explore through the secret teachings of all times by Manly Hall. We are up to chapter 5 now. This is the life and teachings of Tehote Hermes Trismegistus. If you are interested in more about Hermes Trismegistus, I have a whole playlist where I am going through specifically things related to him. I have several different playlists that hold different types of knowledge, so if you're looking for things, you may want to check there. We're going to dive in and talk about, read and discuss the life and teachings of Tehote Hermes Trismegistus. Thunder rolled, lightning flashed, and the veil of the temple was rent from top to bottom. The venerable initiator, in his robes of blue and gold, slowly raised his jeweled wand and pointed it into the darkness, revealed by the tearing of the silken curtain. Behold, the light of Egypt. The candidate, in his plain white robe, gazed into the utter blackness framed by the two great lotus-headed columns, between which the veil had hung. As he watched, a luminous haze distributed itself throughout the atmosphere until the air was a mass of shining particles. The face of the neophyte was illumined by the soft glow as he scanned the shimmering cloud for some tangible object. The initiator spoke again. This light which ye behold is the secret luminance of the mysteries. Whence it comes none knoweth, save the master of the light. Behold him. Suddenly, through the gleaming mist, a figure appeared, surrounded by a flickering greenish sheen. The initiator lowered his wand and, bowing his head, placed one hand edgewise against his breast in humble salutation. The neophyte stepped back in awe, partly blinded by the glory of the revealed figure. Gaining courage, the youth gazed again at the divine one. The form before him was considerably larger than that of a mortal man. The body seemed partly transparent, so that the heart and brain could be seen pulsating and radiant. As the candidate watched, the heart changed into an ibis, and the brain into a flashing emerald. In its hand, the mysterious being bore a winged rod entwined with serpents. The aged initiator, raising his wand, cried out in a loud voice, "All hail thee, Tehote Hermes, thrice greatest! All hail thee, prince of men! All hail thee, who standeth upon the head of Typhon!" At the same instant a lurid, writhing dragon appeared, a hideous monster, part serpent, part crocodile, and part hog. From its mouth and nostrils poured sheets of flame, and horrible sounds echoed through the vaulted chambers. Suddenly, Hermes struck the advancing reptile with the serpent-wound staff, and with a snarling cry, the dragon fell over upon its side, while the flames about it slowly died away. Hermes placed his foot upon the skull of the vanquished Typhon. The next instant, with a blaze of unbearable glory that sent the neophyte staggering backwards against a pillar, the immortal Hermes, followed by streamers of greenish mist, passed through the chamber and faded into nothingness. Suppositions concerning the identity of Hermes. Iamblichus averred that Hermes was the author of 20,000 books. Manetho increased the number to more than 36,000, see James Gardner. Figures which make it evident that a solitary individual, even though he be overshadowed by divine prerogative, could scarcely have accomplished such a monumental labor. Among the arts and sciences which it is affirmed Hermes revealed to mankind were medicine, chemistry, law, art, astrology, music, rhetoric, magic, philosophy, geography, mathematics, especially geometry, anatomy, and oratory. Orpheus was similarly acclaimed by the Greeks. In his Biographica Antiqua, Francis Barrett says of Hermes, "If God ever appeared in man, he appeared in him, as is evident both from his books and his Pymander, in which works he has communicated the sum of the abyss and the divine knowledge of all posterity, by which he has demonstrated himself to have been not only an inspired divine, but also a deep philosopher, obtaining his wisdom from God in heavenly things, and not from man."
His transcendent learning caused Hermes to be identified with many of the early sages and prophets. In his ancient mythology, Bryant writes, I have mentioned that Cadmus was the same as the Egyptian Teote, and it is manifest from his being Hermes, and from the invention of letters being attributed to him. In the chapter on the theory of Pythagorean mathematics will be found the table of the original Cadmean letters. We will get to that. Investigators believe that it was Hermes who was known to the Jews as Enoch, called by the Keneally as the second messenger of God. Hermes was accepted into the mythology of the Greeks, later becoming the Mercury of the Latins. He was revered through the form of the planet Mercury because his body is nearest to the sun. Hermes, of all creatures, was nearest to God and became known as the messenger of the gods. In the Egyptian drawings of him, Teote carries a waxen writing tablet and serves as the recorder during the weighing of the souls of the dead in the first judgment hall of Osiris, a ritual of great significance. Hermes is of first importance to Masonic scholars because he was the author of the Masonic initiatory rituals, which were borrowed from the mysteries established by Hermes. Nearly all the Masonic symbols are Hermetic in character. Pythagoras studied mathematics with the Egyptians and from them gained his knowledge of the symbolic geometric solids. I don't know how true that is. Hermes is also revered for his reformation of the calendar system. He increased the year from 360 to 365 days, thus establishing a precedent which still prevails. The appellation thrice greatest was given to Hermes because he was considered the greatest of all philosophers, the greatest of all priests, and the greatest of all kings. It is worthy of note that the last poem of America's beloved poet, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, was an ode to Hermes. See Chambers' Encyclopedia. I also have that in the playlist. Right, we read that. The mutilated Hermetic fragments. On the subject of the Hermetic books, James Campbell Brown, in his History of Chemistry, has written, leaving the Chaldeans and earliest Egyptian periods, of which we have remains but no record, and from which no names of either chemists or philosophers have come down to us, we now approach the historic period, when books were written, not at first upon parchment or paper, but upon papyrus. A series of early Egyptian books is attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, who may have been a real savant, or may be a personification of a long succession of writers. He is identified by some with the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian Teote or Tuti, who was the moon god and is represented in ancient paintings as ibis-headed, with the disk and crescent of the moon. The Egyptians regarded him as the god of wisdom, letters, and the recording of time. It is in consequence of the great respect entertained for Hermes by the old alchemists that chemical writings were called hermetic, and that the phrase hermetically sealed is still in use to designate the closing of a glass vessel by fusion, after the manner of chemical manipulators. We find the same root in the Hermetic medicines of Paracelsus and the Hermetic Freemasonry of the Middle Ages. Among the fragmentary writings believed to have come from the stylus of Hermes are two famous works. The first is the Emerald Table, and the second is the Divine Pymander. I'm going to have to look up the Emerald Table. Y'all remind me in the comments to do that. Or as it is more commonly called, the Shepherd of Men. Now that one I've done, it's in the playlist. A discussion of which follows. One outstanding point in connection with Hermes is that he was one of the few philosopher priests of pagandom, upon whom the early Christians did not vent their spleen. Some church fathers went so far as to declare that Hermes exhibited many symptoms of intelligence, and that if he had only been born in a more enlightened age, so that he might have benefited by their instructions, he would have been a really great man. Boy, the hubris of the Christians, I tell you what. In his Stromata, Clement of Alexandria, one of the few chroniclers of pagan lore whose writings have been preserved to this age, gives practically all of the information that is known concerning the original 42 books of Hermes and the importance with which these books were regarded by both the temporal and spiritual powers of Egypt. Clement describes one of their ceremonial processions as follows. For the Egyptians pursue a philosophy of their own. This is principally shown by their sacred ceremonial. For first advances the singer bearing some one of the symbols of music. For they say that he must learn two of the books of Hermes, the one which contains the hymns of the god, and the second the regulations for the king's life. And after the singer advances the astrologer, with a horologe in his hand and a palm, the symbols of astrology, he must have the astrological books of Hermes, which are 4 in number, always in his mouth. Of these, one is about the order of the fixed stars that are visible, and another about the conjunctions and luminous appearances of the sun and moon, and the rest respecting their risings. Next in order advances the sacred scribe, with wings on his head, and in his hand a book and rule, in which were writing ink and the reed, and with which they write. And he must be acquainted with what are called hieroglyphics, and know about cosmography and geography, the position of the sun and moon, and about the 5 planets. Also the description of Egypt and the chart of the Nile, and the description of the equipment of the priest and of the place consecrated to them, and about the measures and the things in use in the sacred rites. Then the stole-keeper follows those previously mentioned with the cubit of justice and the cup for libations. He is acquainted with all points called pedutic, relating to training, and moscopholitic, sacrificial. There are also 10 books which relate to the honor paid them by their gods, and containing the Egyptian worship, as relating to sacrifices, first fruits, hymns, prayers, processions, festivals, and the like. And behind all walks the prophet, with the water vase carried openly in his arms, who is followed by those who carry the issue of the loaves. He, as being the governor of the temple, learns the 10 books called hieratic, and they contain all about the laws and the gods, and the whole of the training of the priest. For the prophet is, among the Egyptians, also over the distribution of the revenues. There are then 42 books of Hermes, indispensably necessary, of which 36 containing the whole philosophy of the Egyptians are learned by the forementioned personages, and the other 6, which are medical, by the posterity, image bearers, treating of the structure of the body and of disease and instruments and medicines, and about the eyes, and the last about women. And we're going to go back to this. This is Hermes Trismegistus as illustrated. I'm going to go ahead and save that real quick because I'm going to need that in a minute. Master of all arts and sciences, perfect in all crafts, ruler of the 3 worlds, scribe of the gods and keeper of the books of life, Thoth, Hermes Trismegistus, the 3 times greatest, the first intelligencer, was regarded by the ancient Egyptians as the embodiment of the universal mind. While in all probability there actually existed a great sage and educator by the name of Hermes, it is impossible to extricate the historical man from the mass of legendary accounts which attempt to identify him with the cosmic principle of thought. One of the greatest tragedies of the philosophic world was the loss of nearly all of the 42 books of Hermes mentioned in the foregoing. These books disappeared during the burning of Alexandria, for the Romans, and later the Christians, realized that until these books were eliminated they could never bring the Egyptians into subjugation. The volumes which escaped the fire were buried in the desert, and their location is now known only to a few initiates of the sacred schools. I'm a conspiratorial person, and so I hold some conspiratorial views, and I do believe that these books are still here today. I don't believe they were burned. I believe they were buried in the archives of a certain church, and let's go ahead and name it. It is the Catholics. The Catholics like to take knowledge and hide it away in deep, dark places so that you can never get the birthright that you were born with, that you were meant to have. The ability to manifest is meant to be yours. The ability to self-regulate and to keep your health in order was meant to be yours. And the Catholic Church and their control system has decided that you are not worthy to see it. The Book of Thoth. While Hermes still walked the earth with men, he entrusted to his chosen successors the Book of Thoth. This work contained the secret processes by which the regeneration of humanity was to be accomplished, and also served as the key to his other writings. Nothing definite is known concerning the contents of the Book of Teoti other than that its pages were covered with strange hieroglyphic figures and symbols, which gave to those acquainted with their use unlimited power over the spirits of the air and the subterranean divinities. When certain areas of the brain are stimulated by the secret processes of the mysteries, the consciousness of man is extended and he is permitted to behold the immortals and enter into the presence of the superior gods. The Book of Teoti described the method whereby the stimulation was accomplished. In truth, therefore, it was the key to immortality. According to the legend, the Book of Teoti was kept in a golden box in the inner sanctuary of the temple. There was but one key, and this was in the possession of the Master of the Mysteries, the highest initiate of the Hermetic Arcanum. He alone knew what was written in the secret book. The Book of Teoti was lost to the ancient world with the decay of the mysteries, but its faithful initiates carried it sealed in the sacred casket into another land. The book is still in existence and continues to lead the disciples of this age into the presence of the immortals. No other information can be given to the world concerning it now, but the apostolic succession from the first Hierophant initiated by Hermes himself remains unbroken to this day. And those who are peculiarly fitted to serve the immortals may discover this priceless document if they search sincerely and tirelessly for it. It has been asserted that the Book of Teoti is, in reality, the mysterious Tarot of the Bohemians, a strange, emblematic book of 78 leaves which has been in their possession of the gypsies since the time they were driven from their ancient temples, the Serapeum. According to the secret histories, the gypsies were originally Egyptian priests. There are now in the world several secret schools privileged to initiate candidates into the mysteries, but in nearly every instance, they lighted their altar fires from the flaming torch of Hermes. Hermes, in his Book of Teoti, revealed to all mankind the one way, and for ages the wise of every nation and every faith have reached immortality by the way established by Hermes in the midst of the darkness for the redemption of humankind. And here we take another pause because I have another playlist, right? We talked about Esoterica in the playlist, and one of the esoteric things that we talk about is the tarot. We read the history of the tarot as laid out, and then we talked about the journey of progression over a couple of different videos where I believe that there is a story of initiation, a groundwork laid out for you to get to ascension, and I have dealt with it in great detail in those videos so that you can go back and check them out so that you can see what we're talking about, and I don't have to take the time to go through all of the cards here. There's a whole presentation where we did that, and I may have made an error and thrown in one card twice, but you'll see it and it'll be alright. There is something hidden in tarot. It can be used for divination in certain instances. I believe that reading the energy is a very real thing. The things that are happening now and in the near future and the near past are able to be discerned by the energetic disturbances that they cause, right? That is a slightly less woo-woo way of putting it, but I'm perfectly okay with woo-woo. So, divination is a possibility. But most likely, these cards were to hide something in plain sight so that they did not get burned at the stake by the Christians, right? Christians are really good for tying people to stakes and setting them on fire, or tying them to a chair and seeing if they float with a rock attached, right? They're really good for you don't fit my mold, so we're going to take care of you. And then tarot. Tarot hides things, and that is my opinion in my conspiratorial mind, but it seems to be that the initiation process is detailed and laid out by these cards with the explanation that I have provided. Second part of this discussion is the way. Now, I follow the way. That is really kind of what I call what I do, and that does not in any way implicate Jesus Christ. That is a problem for some people, and I understand that. You should check out my Bible study if you don't understand why I feel that way. But the long and the short of it was, There was never a sacrifice necessary for you to be forgiven for sin. No cows, no goats, no chickens, and no people. There was never a need to be wiped down or washed or sprinkled with any fluids, much less a bodily one. And so I don't hold to that. I believe that the way is God's way, and it is that He is everything. God is, right? God is me, God is you. God is the space between me and you, and the space between me and you. And the space between me and you. He is everything you can see and touch and everything that you cannot. He is every single thought that you have ever had. And so, His way is the way. It is the realization that all things are one and there are diabolical people making diabolical choices. That is a real thing. Your choice is to not. It is to follow the way of God, which is unity and nonviolence. Right? You are allowed to protect yourself, but you're not allowed to aggress on people. It is a much deeper thing, and you should definitely go through the Bible study if any of that piques your interest. Next up, Poimandres, the vision of Hermes. The divine pomander of Hermes, Mercurius Trismegistus, is one of the earliest of the Hermetic writings now extant. While probably not in its original form, having been remodeled during the first centuries of the Christian era and incorrectly translated since, this work undoubtedly contains many of the original concepts of the Hermetic cultus. The Divine Poimander consists of 17 fragmentary writings gathered together and put forth as one work. The second book of the Divine Poimander, called Poimandres, or the Vision, is believed to describe the method by which the divine wisdom was first revealed to Hermes. It was, after Hermes had received this revelation, that he began his ministry, teaching to all who would listen the secrets of the invisible universe as they had been unfolded to him. The Vision is the most famous of all the Hermetic fragments and contains an exposition of Hermetic cosmogony and the secret sciences of the Egyptians regarding the culture and unfoldment of the human soul. For some time it has been erroneously called the Genesis of Enoch, but that mistake has now been rectified. At hand, while preparing the following interpretation of the symbolic philosophy concealed within the Vision of Hermes, the present author has had these reference works: The Divine Poimander of Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus, London, 1650, translated out of the Arabic and Greek by Dr. Everett. Hermetica, Oxford, 1924, edited by Walter Scott. Hermes, The Mysteries of Egypt, Philadelphia, 1925, by Edouard Schutter. And The Thrice Greatest Hermes, London, 1906, by G.R.S. Mead. That's the one I did. To the material contained in the above volumes, he has added commentaries based upon the esoteric philosophy of the ancient Egyptians, together with the amplifications derived partly from other Hermetic fragments and partly from the secret arcanum of the Hermetic sciences. For the sake of clarity, the narrative form has been chosen in
preference to the original dialogic style, and and obsolete words have given place to those in current use.
Hermes, while wandering in a rocky and desolate place, gave himself over to meditation and prayer. Following the secret instructions of the temple, he gradually freed his higher consciousness from the bondage of his bodily senses, and thus released, his divine nature revealed to him the mysteries of the transcendental spheres. He beheld a figure, terrible and awe-inspiring. It was the great dragon, with wings stretching across the sky and light streaming in all directions from its body. The mysteries taught that the universal life was personified as a dragon. The great dragon called Hermes by name and asked him why he thus meditated upon the world mystery. Terrified by the spectacle, Hermes prostrated himself before the dragon, beseeching it to reveal its identity. The great creature answered that it was Poimandres, the mind of the universe, the creative intelligence, and the absolute emperor of all. Shor identifies Poimandres as the god Osiris. Hermes then besought Poimandres to disclose the nature of the universe and the constitution of the gods. The dragon acquiesced, bidding Trismegistus hold its image in his mind. Immediately, the form of Poimandres changed. Where it had stood there was a glorious and pulsating radiance. This light was the spiritual nature of the great dragon itself. Hermes was raised into the midst of this divine effulgence, and the universe of material things faded from his consciousness. Presently a great darkness descended and, expanding, swallowed up the light. Everything was troubled. About Hermes swirled a mysterious, watery substance which gave forth a smoke-like vapor. The air was filled with inarticulate moanings and sighings which seemed to come from the light, swallowed up in the darkness. His mind told Hermes that the light was the form of the spiritual universe, and that the swirling darkness which had engulfed it represented the material substance. And this is Tehote the ibis-headed. And we're going to save that one too. From Wilkinson's Manners and Customs of the Ancient Egyptians. It is doubtful that the deity called Tehote by the Egyptians was originally Hermes, but the two personalities were blended together, and it is now impossible to separate them. Tehote was called the Lord of the Divine Books and Scribe of the Company of the Gods. He is generally depicted with the body of a man and the head of an ibis. This exact symbolic meaning of this latter bird has never been discovered. A careful analysis of the particular shape of the ibis, especially its head and beak, should prove illuminating. Then, out of the imprisoned light, a mysterious and holy word came forth and took its stand upon the smoking waters. This word, the voice of the light, rose out of the darkness as a great pillar, and the fire and the air followed after it, but the earth and the water remained unmoved below. Thus the waters of light were divided from the waters of darkness, and from the waters of light were formed the worlds above, and from the waters of darkness were formed the worlds below. The earth and the water next mingled, becoming inseparable, and the spiritual word, which is called reason, moved upon their surface, causing endless turmoil. Then again was heard the voice of Poimandres, but his form was not revealed. I, thy God, am the light and the mind which were, before the substance was divided from spirit, and darkness from light. And the Word which appeared as a pillar of flame out of the darkness is the Son of God, born of the mystery of the mind. The name of that Word is Reason. Reason is the offspring of thought, and reason shall divide the light from the darkness and establish truth in the midst of the waters. Understand, O Hermes, and meditate deeply upon the mystery. That which in you sees and hears is not of the earth, but is the Word of God incarnate. So it is said that the divine light dwells in the midst of mortal darkness, and ignorance cannot divide them. The union of the Word and the mind produces that mystery which is called life. As the darkness without you is divided against itself, so the darkness within you is likewise divided. The light and the fire which rise are the divine man, ascending in the path of the Word, and that which fails to ascend is the mortal man, which may not partake of immortality. Learn deeply of the mind and its mystery, for therein lies the secret of immortality. The dragon again revealed its form to Hermes, and for a long time the two looked steadfastly one upon the other, eye to eye, so that Hermes trembled before the gaze of Poimandres. At the word of the dragon the heavens opened, and the innumerable light powers were revealed, soaring through cosmos on pinions of streaming fire. Hermes beheld the spirits of the stars, the celestials controlling the universe, and all those powers which shine with the radiance of this one fire, the glory of the sovereign mind. Hermes realized that the sight which he beheld was revealed to him only because Poimandres had spoken a word. The word was reason, and by the reason of the word, invisible things were made manifest. Divine mind, the dragon, continued its discourse. Before the visible universe was formed, its mold was cast. This mold was called the archetype. And this archetype was in the Supreme Mind long before the process of creation began. Beholding the archetypes, the Supreme Mind became enamored with its own thought. So, taking the Word as a mighty hammer, it gouged out caverns in primordial space and cast the form of the spheres into the archetypal mold, at the same time sowing in the newly fashioned bodies the seeds of living things. The darkness below, receiving the hammer of the Word, was fashioned into an orderly universe. The elements separated into strata, and each brought forth living creatures. The Supreme Being, the Mind, male and female, brought forth the Word, and the Word, suspended between light and darkness, was delivered of another mind, called the Workman, the Master Builder, or the Maker of Things. In this manner it was accomplished, O Hermes. The Word, moving like a breath through space, called forth the fire by the friction of its motion. Therefore the fire is called the Sun of Striving. The Workman passed as a whirlwind through the universe, causing the substances to vibrate and glow with its friction. The Sun of Striving thus formed 7 governors, the spirits of the planets, whose orbits bounded the world, and the 7 governors controlled the world by mysterious power called destiny, given them by the fiery Workman. When the second mind, the Workman, had organized chaos, the Word of God rose straightway out of its prison of substance, leaving the elements without reason, and joined itself to the nature of the fiery Workman. Then the second mind, together with the risen Word, established itself in the midst of the universe and whirled the wheels of the celestial powers. This shall continue from an infinite beginning to an infinite end, for the beginning and the ending are in the same place and state. The downward turned, unreasoning elements brought forth creatures without reason. Substance could not bestow reason, for reason had ascended out of it. The air produced flying things, and the waters such as swim. The earth conceived strange, four-footed and creeping beasts, dragons, composite demons, and grotesque monsters. Then the Father, the Supreme Mind, being light and life, fashioned a glorious, universal man in its own image, not an earthly man, but a heavenly man, dwelling in the light of God. The Supreme Mind loved the man it had fashioned and delivered to him the control of creations and workmanships. The man, desiring to labor, took up his abode in the sphere of generation and observed the works of his brother, the second mind, which sat upon the ring of the fire. And having beheld the achievements of the fiery Workman, he willed also to make things, and his father gave permission. The 7 governors, of whose powers
he partook, rejoiced and gave each man a share of its own nature. The man longed to pierce the circumference of the circles and understand the mystery of him who sat upon the eternal fire. Having already all power, he stooped down and peeped through the 7 harmonies, and breaking through the strength of the circles, made himself manifest to nature, stretched out below. The man, looking into the depths, smiled, for he beheld a shadow upon the earth and a likeness mirrored in the waters, which shadow and likeness were a reflection of himself. The man fell in love with his own shadow and desired to descend into it. Coincident with the desire, the intelligent thing united itself with the unreasoning image or shape. Nature, beholding the descent, wrapped herself about the man whom she loved, and the two were mingled. For this reason, earthly man is composite. Within him is the sky man, immortal and beautiful. Without is nature, mortal and destructible. Sorry, I gotta have a water. Thus, suffering is the result of the immortal man's falling in love with his shadow and giving up reality to dwell in the darkness of illusion. For being immortal, man has the power of the 7 governors, also the life, the light, and the word, but being mortal, he is controlled by the rings of the governors.
fate or destiny. Of the immortal man, it should be said that he is hermaphrodite, or male and female, and eternally watchful. He neither slumbers nor sleeps, and is governed by a father, also male and female, and ever watchful. Such is the mystery kept hidden to this day, for nature, being mingled in marriage with the skyman, brought forth a wonder most wonderful. 7 men, all bisexual, male and female, and upright of stature, each one exemplifying the natures of the 7 governors. These, O Hermes, are the 7 races, species, and wheels. After this manner were the 7 men generated. Earth was the female element, and water the male element, and from the fire and ether they received their spirits. And nature produced the bodies after the species and shapes of men. And man received the life and light of the great dragon, and of the life was made his soul, and of the light his mind. And so all these composite creatures, containing immortality but partaking of mortality, continued in this state for the duration of a period. They reproduced themselves out of themselves, for each was male and female. But at the end of the period the knot of destiny was untied by the will of God, and the bond of all things was loosened. Then all living creatures, including man, which had been hermaphroditical, were separated, the males being set apart by themselves, and the females likewise, according to the dictates of a reason. And then God spoke the holy word within the soul of all things, saying, Increase in increasing, and multiply in multitudes, all you, my creatures and workmanships. Let him that is endued with mind know himself to be immortal, and that the cause of death is the love of the body, and let him learn all things that are. For he who has recognized himself enters into the state of good. Okay, and so this is a Greek form of Hermes, and he has what looks to be maybe a goat head. We have a bull off to the side. There's a human head. He's got the dragon at his feet. There's the pitcher of knowledge. There's a lot of symbology in here. The name Hermes is derived from Herm, the form of Chiron, the personified universal life principle generally represented by fire. The Scandinavians worshipped Hermes under the name of Odin, the Teutons as Wotan, and certain of the Oriental peoples as Buddha or Thoth. There are 2 theories concerning his demise. The first declares that Hermes was translated, like Enoch, and carried without death into the presence of God. The second states that he was buried in the valley of Hebron, and a great treasure placed in his tomb. Not a treasure of gold, but of books and sacred learning. The Egyptians likened humanity to a flock of sheep. The supreme and inconceivable father was the shepherd, and Hermes was the shepherd dog. The origin of the shepherd's crook and religious symbolism may be traced to the Egyptian rituals. The 3 scepters of Egypt include this shepherd's crook, symbolizing that by virtue of the power reposing in that symbolic staff, the initiated pharaohs guided the destiny of their people. And when God had said this, Providence, with the aid of the 7 governors in harmony, brought the sexes together, making the mixtures and establishing the generations, and all things were multiplied according to their kind. He who through the error of attachment loves his body abides wandering in darkness, sensible, and suffering the things of death. But he who realizes that the body is but the tomb of the soul rises to immortality. And I'm going to take some contention with that, because it is not the tomb of the soul. The body is not the final destination. Your soul is immortal. It was somewheres before it was in this incarnation, and it will be somewheres afterwards. Where is up for debate. I personally believe that after death we get reunited with God, and we see all of the things that we didn't. Right? We get all of the answers to all of the questions that we had in life, and we're like, oh, that's where I messed up. Oh, I see now what the plan was. Oh, I see why we got this delay, why this trouble came upon me. All of these things are revealed to you as faster than the blink of an eye. And I believe that you can Absolutely. Stay in the unification of God. But I believe that we are all here voluntarily. This is not a prison planet. This is an experience planet. It's like a vacation for the soul. Being in the oneness is great. You have perfect love and perfect harmony with no discord, but it's a little bit boring. And so we have the experience. We have where we are. We get to have the experience of life. And sometimes it's shitty. Sometimes it is really rough. But sometimes it's absolutely wonderful. Seeing the birth of your child, wonderful. Seeing them grow up to become a perfectly perfect human being, wonderful. So we get both the good and the bad, and that's why we are here. This is not a tomb. It's an experience. This is not where you're buried. This is what you get to do. This is what you get to do. Not what you have to do, not what you're chained to, but what you get to do. You get to have the experience of the mortal for the immortal. And so I take great contention with calling the meat suit a tomb. I know the meat suit turns people off. Me saying that word, I could say the flesh, I could say the body, but the meat suit drives it home in a visceral way. There are three parts, right? The body, the soul, and the becoming, the Holy Spirit. It's the Trinity, is the meat suit, the spark of divinity that is you making the decisions, and the Spirit of God that allows those decisions to become part of your life. It is the becoming, the part that changes what could be into what is. That is part of you. You have control of that if you take the time to get the discipline. And so once you have that knowledge, you cannot think of this as a tomb. You can't even think of your suffering in the same way. It's somewhat of a curse. It's a lot easier to walk around being like, oh, boo-hoo, this happened to me and it's terrible. When you realize that that was part of your growth process and that you became a better person because of the terrible thing that happened, then things change for you. Then you have the key to enlightenment for real, and not just the stuff that they peddle you in church on Sunday. Next up. Then Hermes desired to know why men should be deprived of immortality for the sin of ignorance alone. The great dragon answered, to the ignorant the body is supreme, and they are incapable of realizing the immortality that is within them. Knowing only the body which is subject to death, they believe in death, because they worship that substance which is the cause and reality of death. And so we get a little bit of that. I had to stop it. I had to say something. Then Hermes asked how the righteous and wise pass to God, to which Poimandres replied, that which the word of God said, say I, because the Father of all things consists of life and light, whereof man is made. If therefore a man shall learn and understand the nature of life and light, then he shall pass into the eternity of life and light. Hermes next inquired about the road by which the wise attain to life eternal. And Poimandres continued, let the man, endued with a mind, mark, consider, and learn of himself, and with the power of his mind, divide himself from his not-self, and become a servant of reality. Wow, that is amazing. Embrace the experience is what that is telling you right here. Understand that you are not the body, but that you are here for the experience, and do it. Hermes asked if all men did not have minds, and the great dragon replied, take heed what you say, for I am the mind, the eternal teacher. I am the Father of the Word, the Redeemer of all men. And in the nature of the wise, the Word takes flesh. By means of the Word, the world is saved. I, Thoth, Teote, the Father of the Word, the mind, come only unto men that are holy and good, pure and merciful, and that live piously and religiously. And my presence is an inspiration and a help to them. For when I come, they immediately know all things and adore the universal Father. Before such wise and philosophic ones die, they learn to renounce their senses, knowing that these are the enemies of their immortal souls. I will not permit the evil senses to control the bodies of those who love me, nor will I allow evil emotions and evil thoughts to enter them. I become as a porter or doorkeeper, and shut out evil, protecting the wise from their own lower nature. But to the wicked, the envious, and the covetous, I come not, for such cannot understand the mysteries of mind. Therefore I am unwelcome. I leave them to the avenging demon that they are making in their own souls, for evil, each day, increases itself and torments men more sharply, and each evil deed adds to the evil deeds that are gone before, until finally evil destroys itself. The punishment of desire is the agony of unfulfillment. Hermes bowed his head in thankfulness to the great dragon who had taught him so much, and begged to hear and more concerning the ultimate of the human soul. So Poimandres resumed. At death, the material body of man is returned to the elements from which it came, and the invisible divine man ascends to the source from whence he came, namely the eighth sphere. Eighth is perfect. The evil passes to the dwelling place of the demon, and the senses, feelings, desires, and the body passions return to their source, namely the seven governors, whose nature in the lower man destroy, but in the invisible spirit, spiritual man, give life. The seven governors are not necessarily the seven planets. You have seven internal magnetic centers called the chakras that regulate you. They are in the world, and you have one that is the eighth, which is the divine, which plays directly into this. Also, I didn't stop to make a note before, but I'm going to go ahead and stop and make the note now. You do not have to be pure, holy, perfectly aligned for these things to happen. You can manifest while you are doing the wrong thing, but it is an extremely bad decision to do so. If you are not in alignment with the 8 laws of creation, you should definitely be that before you get into this. If you are trying to manifest and you are not properly aligned, then the results will not be correct. It is a rule, it is one of the laws, and it is there for a reason. After the lower nature has returned to the brutishness, the higher struggles again to retain its spiritual estate. It ascends the 7 rings upon which sit the 7 governors, and returns to each their lower powers in this manner. Upon the first ring sits the moon, and to it is returned the ability to increase and diminish. Upon the second ring sits Mercury, and to it are returned machinations, deceit, and craftiness. Upon the third ring sits Venus, and to it are returned the lust and passions. Upon the fourth ring sits the sun, and to this lord are returned ambitions. Upon the 5th ring sits Mars, and to it are returned rashness and profane boldness. Upon the 6th ring sits Jupiter, and to it are returned the sense of accumulation and riches. Upon the 7th ring sits Saturn, at the gate of chaos, and to it are returned falsehood and evil plotting. Then, being naked of all the accumulations of the 7 rings, the soul comes to the 8th sphere, namely, the ring of the fixed stars. Here, freed of an illusion, it dwells in the light and sings praises to the Father in a voice which only the pure of spirit may understand. Behold, O Hermes, there is a great mystery in the 8th sphere. For the Milky Way is the seed ground of souls, and from it they drop into the rings, and to the Milky Way they return again from the wheels of Saturn. But some cannot climb the 7-runged ladder of the ring, so they wander in darkness below and are swept into eternity with the illusion of sense and earthiness. The path to immortality is hard, and only a few find it. The rest await the great day when the wheels of the universe shall be stopped, and the immortal sparks shall escape from the sheaths of substance. Woe unto those who wait, for they must return again, unconscious and unknowing, to the seed ground of stars, and await a new beginning. Those who were saved by the light of the mystery which I have revealed to you, O Hermes, and which I now bid you to establish among men, shall return again to the Father who dwelleth in the white light, and shall deliver themselves up to the light, and shall be absorbed into the light, and in the light they shall become powers in God. This is the way of good, and is revealed only to them that have wisdom. Blessed art thou, O Son of Light, to whom all men, I, Pomandres, the light of the world, have revealed myself. I order you to go forth to become as a guide to those who wander in darkness, that all men, within whom dwells the spirit of my mind, the universal mind, may be saved by my mind in you, which shall call forth my mind in them. Establish my mysteries, and they shall not fail from the earth, for I am the mind of the mysteries, and until the mind fails, which is never, my mysteries cannot fail. With these parting words, Pomandres, radiant with celestial light, vanished, mingling with the powers of the heavens. Raising his eyes unto the heavens, Hermes blessed the Father of all things, and consecrated his life to the service of the great light. Thus preached Hermes, O people of the earth, men born and made of elements, but with the spirit of divine man within you. Rise from your sleep of ignorance, be sober and thoughtful, realize that your home is not in the earth, but in the light. Why have you delivered yourselves over unto death, having power to partake of immortality? Repent and change your minds. Depart from the dark light and forsake corruption forever. Prepare yourselves to climb through the 7 rings and to blend your souls with the eternal light. Some who heard mocked and scoffed and went their way, delivering themselves to the second death, from which there is no salvation. But others, casting themselves before the feet of Hermes, besought him to teach them the way of life. He lifted them gently, receiving no approbation for himself, and staff in hand, went forth teaching and guiding mankind, and showing them how they might be saved. In the worlds of men, Hermes sowed the seeds of wisdom, and nourished the seeds with the immortal waters. And at last came the evening of his life, and as the brightness of the light of the earth was beginning to go down, Hermes commanded his disciples to preserve his doctrines inviolate throughout all ages. The vision of Pomandres he committed to writing, that all men desiring immortality might therein find the way. In concluding his exposition of the vision, Hermes wrote, "The sleep of the body is the sober watchfulness of the mind, and the shutting of my eyes reveals the true light. My silence is filled with budding life and hope, and is full of good. My words are the blossoms of fruit on the tree of my soul. For this is the faithful account of what I received from my true mind. That is,
Pomandres, the great dragon,
the Lord of the Word, through whom I became inspired by God with the truth. Since that day my mind has been ever with me, and in my own soul it hath given birth to the Word. The Word is reason, and reason hath redeemed me. For which cause with all my soul and all my strength I give praise and blessing unto God the Father, the life and the light and the eternal good. Holy is God, the Father of all things, the one who is before the first beginning. Holy is God, whose will is performed and accomplished by his own powers, which he hath given birth to out of himself. Holy is God, who has determined that he shall be known, and who is known by his own, to whom he reveals himself. Holy art thou, who by thy word, reason, hast established all things. Holy art thou, of whom all nature is the image. Holy art thou, whom the inferior nature has not formed. Holy art thou, who art stronger than all powers. Holy art thou, who art greater than all excellency. Holy art thou, who art better than all praise. Accept these reasonable sacrifices from a pure soul and a heart stretched out unto thee. O thou unspeakable, unutterable, be praised with silence. I beseech thee to look mercifully upon me, that I may not err from the knowledge of thee, and that I may enlighten those that are in ignorance, my brothers and thy sons. Therefore I believe thee, and bear witness unto thee, and depart in peace and in trustfulness into thy light and life. Blessed art thou, O Father, the man thou hast fashioned would be sanctified with thee, as thou hast given him power to sanctify others with thy word and thy truth. The vision of Hermes, like nearly all of the Hermetic writings, is an allegorical exposition of the great philosophic and mystic truths, and its hidden meaning may be comprehended only by those who have been raised into the presence of the true mind. And so ends chapter 5, and we learned a good bit here, right? We talked a lot. We have already been through the works of Hermes. There is more, apparently, and I'm going to try to find them. If you know them, let me know down below. There is great truth contained in here. You are meant to overcome the fleshly desires. That's not to say that you will not ever desire to have sex, because that is foolish, or to have a drink, because that is foolish. Complete abstinence is not strength, right? It is a certain type of strength, but it is not true strength. True strength is the ability to partake and not be overcome. It is the ability to have a sexual relationship with a partner and not 10 or 20. It is the ability to have a drink or two in social environments and not 10 or 20. It is the ability to restrain yourself from giving in to the fleshly lusts, all of them. There are 7 virtues and there are 7 vices, and you are meant to balance them. You're not meant to be to one extreme or the other. That is where this has misled so many people, right? There is an effort in here to reconcile Christianity. It is subtle. I didn't exposit upon it, but it is true. God wants you to realize that, right? There has never been a sacrifice required for you to be forgiven from your sins. The only thing God ever required for you to be forgiven from your sin was for you to sacrifice your sin, to turn yourself around and to do the correct thing. But that is not abstinence. It is balance. Otherwise, the temptation would not be here. Hopefully, I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs and that I have a tendency to step on toes when I deliver that. It is not intentional, but it is not something I apologize for. I try to be stark and honest in these. I try to talk about things that I know, and I try to not talk about things that I don't know. I have, it sounds so terrible to say it, right? But I have found enlightenment. Is it a process that I am finished with? No. Is it a process that I am well on the way of? Yes. Do I ever anticipate being finished with it? No. It is a continual learning and growing process. It is continually continuing to make the correct decisions with whatever the situation may be. The things that I tell you here, I have practiced in my own life. I am manifesting healing. I can talk. I have removed a cyst in my throat. Through the power of God, never get it twisted. But it was me directing the energies. It was me requesting. It was me seeking. It was me knocking. It was me finding. It was me using the powers that have been bestowed to you too. It has changed my life already. We are already well underway onto true empowerment. I am literally manifesting things in my life. You don't have to believe me. I cannot convince you. I can talk to you, and that should be a little bit of convincing. But it doesn't have to be. My voice is still weak. I still have doubters, and that's fine. Doubt me. It's not about me. It's about him. Don't doubt him. If you like what I'm doing here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment. Let me know you appreciate it. Let me know if you agree or disagree. As long as it stays respectful, it gets to stay up. If you really like what I'm doing here, hit me with the super things. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you were here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.